Hello and welcome to today's development key review. I'm happy to host today instead of Christopher Levelhartz, as he is out at the moment. So I'm more than happy to take you through the numbers, which is something Christopher has already done, but also especially be open for questions. And looking at down the list, I see already a question from Sid. Do you want to verbalize that one?
Yeah, thanks. It was amazing to see like a 60% better largest contentful paint LCP. Why the big improvement? Like we've been trying to improve that historically, and I was surprised there was some low-hanging fruit.
Yes, those are really amazing new numbers. What actually kicked it off for the big improvement this time was our change in the background, how we are hosting assets. So we switched from one CDN provider Fastly to Cloudflare. And in that sense, we also moved from a subdomain to the same domain, so that it is basically hosted just in a subfolder and is directly streamed down from Cloudflare. What we believe based on the numbers is that browser performance is a quite complex topics, as you have a couple of things at the same time at play. So you have on one hand networking, you have browser rendering, you have CPU stuff, you have JavaScript stuff that we have improved a lot on a couple of areas. So we have seen this also in much smaller numbers also before, where we saw drops only when another thing that was blocking the rest of it was also resolved. And to some extent, what we believe is that simply how slow the serving of our static assets was simply unblocking all the other things that we have done also over the last 6 months. And on the other hand, switching from subdomain to same domain also helped there, as we have now HTTP 2 in the works. So that definitely helped. And it seems also, and that was something we thought that might be a small, tiny millisecond difference, but it seems that especially where we are running our tests, we see definitely a huge difference between Fastly and Cloudflare. And both development and infrastructure was quite surprised by that.
Yeah, that is remarkable. Should we tighten up the goal a bit now that we know that this is possible, to make sure that if there's a future regression that we see that quickly?
Yeah. So a couple of things that happened, especially already over the last quarter. One of the main things is that we were not looking. In the last year, we were looking at the 5 top used routes that were both monitored from us, but also from competitors, and we were mainly focusing on them. What we have done, especially over the last 2 quarters, was also the overall routes that we are measuring. So I think we are measuring around 110 different routes at the moment synthetically. And the target was not to improve those 5 top routes, but have as many routes as possible in a good LCP range, which is below 2.5 seconds. So this is one of the sub-targets that we are currently targeting. I think we went from around 50% of all the routes that we are measuring to, at the moment, 75 to 80% that are on a good LCP level, which is also something really great to see. But we are also looking, especially now, on the huge outliers where we are having very long timings. This is one of the OKR targets. And the other thing that we were just discussing even today in one of the working groups is together with infrastructure and the front end is to have more run data and have more data that we can have in real time. So real user metrics. So really the performance timings that we are not recording synthetically, that we are running every 3 hours from 3 different locations, but rather collect the data from the clients. How is their performance? How are the measurements against the API and the specific routes? And this would also enlarge not to the 110 routes that we currently have in the package, but would also enlarge it to all routes that we have in visibility. which is a complex field because run data is then very hard to read and can have huge outliers because people have flaky internet connections or devices, etc. But it should give us also another level of insight that we are currently targeting.
Cool. That's really cool to see that we're doing that so comprehensively. And I think with the third-party monitoring, we see that we're getting closer to GitHub than I think we were a couple of months ago.
Yeah.
So that's great. I think the most striking about this, if this data is correct, is that Bitbucket is really slow, and that's also what I've been hearing anecdotally. So that's interesting. And then, maybe you addressed my question, but still I can't help but ask, should we update our LCP, like those 5 routes goal a little bit?
I believe that 2.5 seconds is also the official mark from Google, from the Web Vitals. That is basically
so
the
you'd
target.
rather
So
introduce something new that is about more routes. Great.
Yes,
Awesome.
exactly.
Thank you.
Welcome. Yeah, and the last point was a blog post about increased performance. Yes, we would love to do this. We have one more magic thing in the bag at the moment, which is currently being rolled out, which is huge improvements on the side of the MR pages and especially large MRs. So we have seen huge increases in memory consumption, but also total blocking times. So we want to pack everything up to have basically a good representation. Look, we believe and we can measure and we can show in numbers that GitLab as a whole is becoming faster and faster historically, but especially the stuff that people care about in their daily work routines, and which are huge MRs or huge pages. We are definitely focusing on those and solving those one by one. So that is definitely
might be two. It sounds like it's 2 blog posts. Like the static hosting stuff is very different from the large MRs. So I'd recommend to do 2, but up to you. You have to do the work.
Cool. Eric, not here. So I will verbalize for him. We have a background conversation about GitLab.com incidents the last 2 weeks. Maybe you can voice some of the changes we are discussing, making from the development department's perspective. Yes. So what we are seeing is that we had a couple of S1 incidents week by week by week, coming from different directions, coming from different topics, either code changes, infrastructure changes, cascading effects. So a couple of different things. And we are currently trying to rethink a little bit how can we prevent this in the first place. So one of the things is definitely to mitigate and get out of a S1 zone as soon as possible. So one of the topics is for sure to rather take a look on our on-call process. Is there something that we can do around a stage-driven on-call process so that we have not only developers on call, but really stage-specific or even group-specific to some extent in very complex areas, because sometimes it is simply this is super complex. I have never been in this area of code, so please, super experts, rather help yourself is the answer from a developer maybe. So this might help in those areas. The other thing is definitely to take a look on staging. Staging is definitely a huge topic. Staging is very different due to multiple reasons historically, etc., to production. And the only thing how you can have and find and get them into your net is find them on staging, and everyone is happy with finding something on staging, pulling the cord and saying, no, we are not releasing this to production. So I think this is also what we need to get set up, that we are like 99.9% close to that, but Meg can definitely speak in more detail about this as he's also on the call. Another thing that I would like to invest a little bit of time is to figure out also how much of the stuff that is happening is already known. So what we have seen now a couple of times, and I want to put data to it, is we have an incident, it's researched, a couple of hours, what was the root cause? Oh, there is this issue, which is 4 months old, 5 months old, 6 months old, which one engineer discovered, which which is nothing huge, but a small detailed issue. It was there to have a better understanding what are things that are already around and what are things that might have been already prevented, to get this better and have ICs and engineering management have a better look. There is something, and we are expecting that this might break. So this also should help. And prediction, to some extent, the complexity of really complex and large customers that are doing from all ends, user-wise, API-wise, tons of things. Something that we are following the lead from infrastructure is prediction. So we were looking this quarter a lot into prediction. So how many issues are created on the API today, and how many will be created in 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, 24 months? And is there anything along the route that we can't turn around immediately? So are we running out of keys? Are we running out of physics in scaling? So that the team has a better understanding. Is there something that we need to invest now to prevent us in basically a dead end, which is nothing that can prevent it simply by throwing money at it, by scaling through servers? So yeah, I think those are a couple of the topics that we are trying to drive at the moment at the same time, and discussing where we should prioritize there. Matt, anything that you want to add, or Chan, as you are also on the call?
I'll add color onto the new gating and testing environments. We have an engineering allocation now to set up a mixed deployment testing environment. The current staging, I believe you've outgrown it. It's been set up for a long time with the data that's outdated. With fast deployments, mixed deployments, multi-node status being out of sync, we really need to catch this in our new staging before it gets released to production. And that's something we'll work closely with development and infrastructure on as well. There's an engineering allocation created for it as of last night. Yes.
Any follow-up questions on that? Good. Brian, you are next.
Yeah, I'll hit point 8 here. Just supporting Christopher's observation on point 5 that he listed above, asynchronously around, hitting 100% of your OKRs. My viewpoint, and just if you take a look at the way OKRs, at least the way Google has done it, hitting 100% would be actually a bad result, because that means you're not being aspirational enough. So great work there. And I'm just curious, I haven't been able to actually see Ally.io, because I know it's being run by the engineering side of the house, but has it been set up in a way to support that sort of mindset going forward?
I'll jump in here. KT is also helping out. So KT, feel free to step on my toes after this. I'm the engineering conduit for Ally. We do have this conversation already. There's a mechanism called aspirational and committed. Engineering, we would default to aspirational by default, and that is at 70% as completed. To your point, Brian, on transparency, we are pushing hard on getting Ally to get us to integrate OKR views into the handbook. We're testing it out as of next week, and it will be ready for our Q3 OKRs, and we'll provide full transparency there. KT, feel free to add anything else. I know you're working with the product organization as well.
Yeah, that's a great distinction. The other thing I'd say is, I know some of the development OKRs that don't roll up through Eric or to SIDS, they do some that we say are committed. They'll have one that is for everyone in the org to do a training or things like that. So those are the ones that hit 100. But yeah, that's a great reminder that the 70% is what we would want to see for aspirational. And I believe, Mac, most all the ones that Eric that roll up to Eric, that roll up to Sid are typically aspirational because they relate to development efforts. Is that correct?
That's correct. The plan to have the committed ones will be people related. So training, compliance, where we know we need to make it 100%, the BIP training, all those compliance activities. The rest we will default to being ambitious at 70%.
Thanks for the MR and issues there. I'm going to go check those out. And it's good to, I know we're maturing in this area, and it's good to see engineering sort of leading the way here, which is awesome. I look forward to learning more. Thank you.
Good. Thanks a lot, everybody. Looking at the agenda, I'm not seeing any more questions. Thanks for joining. Thanks to Christopher for creating an awesome preview video.